In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Alabama, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Miami all marching on to the quarterfinal round after big wins and some controversial wins, so to speak, as far as the way that you see the college football playoff bracket, what it means for the future of scheduling if this thing does go into 14 or 16 teams moving forward. But Alabama is headed to the Rose Bowl after the only quote-unquote upset of the weekend. Welcome into Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, we walked into this thing knowing that there could be some issues, especially with the two Group of 5 teams that were able to get into this college football playoff. However, now that we're already in and everything has been digested from the first round, what are your overall takes?
Well, gee, let me just start with I'm 4-0 and you're 3-1, so there's that. So this is the round where my takes are probably going to start going off the rails because I still have Ole Miss in the national championship game. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to pan out. But yes, as you mentioned, the Group of 5, really they were the topic of discussion all the way back when the committee released their bracket. Mm-hmm. And when you look at these games from this past weekend, I mean, they lost by a combined 48 points. And that James Madison score is a little bit deceiving because Oregon was up 34-6 at
100%.
halftime, and Oregon threw in their third stringer. So, I mean, they were just completely outmatched in both college football playoff games that they were in. Ole Miss comfortably winning that one at home. Trinidad, he's my guy. He's been my guy all year, and it's just unfortunate because I think if he played those first 3 games of the year, he would have been in New York last weekend.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that whenever you have a situation like this, you kind of harken back to other sports, and especially when it comes to like the things like the college World Series, when it comes to the Women's College World Series, when it comes to the NCAA tournament bracket, you always find a way to get these smaller quote-unquote teams in the field. However, in a narrower field, 12 teams that are in it, there's going to be a lot of talk about what the Group of 5's place is moving forward here. You brought up the 2 scores. Like you said, it could be deceiving. It could be 50 points, or even 60 points,
yeah.
the separation and the gap between what we see from the Power 5 and what we see from the Group of 5.
Well, I want to pose this question to you. What do you think the goal of the 12-team playoff is? Is it to get the 12 best teams
That's the thing.
in the college football playoff, or is
Right.
it to get equal representation from all these different conferences? I totally understand the goal of getting the Group of 5 in and having representation at the table.
Yeah.
I just think with 12 teams, it's just too small at this point. When you look at the NCAA tournament, it's over 68 teams. It probably will be over 68 teams here moving forward. And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, why are we trying to set these guys up, not necessarily for failure, but I think we should have a Group of 5 championship.
Right.
Because, I mean,
so you think of like branching them out altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just going to say this. I was watching some of the FCS games this past weekend, and they were electric. Like, I think the Group of 5 needs something like that. And then maybe if, they want to follow Nick Saban and what he said on Friday about have the AAA champion, so to speak, go on to play one of these Power 4 games, then, I mean, I'm all in favor of that. But just right now, playoffs too small. We can't be doing this.
Right. I think when it comes down to 12 teams, I think it's obvious when you take a look at a team like Texas, although they have 3 losses.
Yeah.
When you take a look at a team like Vanderbilt, although they have 2 losses on the season, you can make a pretty easy case. It's pretty open and shut.
Right.
The fact that Vanderbilt is a lot better than JMU.
Yes.
That Texas is a lot better than who's the other team? Oh, JMU. Not JMU, but
Tulane.
Tulane. Same thing with Notre Dame. I know a lot of people had a lot of arguments about that because Notre Dame lost to Miami in the field. I think both teams probably deserved a seat at the table. I wouldn't be mad, though, if you put Texas or Vandy in that spot there. But I'm with you because I feel like what we're doing now is we're doing a best versus deserving. Right. If we're looking for a best 12-team field, then it's pretty obvious. It should be pretty obvious before this, but it's obviously very obvious now that we're not having the best 12 teams in. We're having 8 teams, 9 teams, probably 10 teams that are legitimately in the field, and then a couple of teams that it feels good to have them in there. But then, like you said, once they're in, it kind of feels like two teams basically wasted their time playing these games.
Right, and I think some people should direct their anger towards Virginia and the ACC for completely letting Duke in their tiebreaker scenario, which we can get all into that. I mean, everyone knows I'm an ACC guy, so that was just an embarrassing time for the conference that 7-5 Duke ended up winning the ACC and got 2 G5 teams in. But I mean, you can talk about the last 2 years. I will say this: Boise State deserved to be in last year. But I think we found out, had Boise State played in a first-round game, I think they would have won a game.
Right.
But, we found out last year that maybe it's not a great idea to just give all the conference champions
that
all
first
that time
first
off.
round bye, and the time off.
I mean, I think they got a tough draw, too. What did Boise State do best? Run the football. What did Penn State do best last year? Stop the run. So, I mean, it was just immovable force versus immovable object, and it was just unfortunate. But when you look at this year, I mean – all respect in the world to the American Conference. I mean, we kind of knew that the American champion was guaranteed to be in this year.
Right.
But there was just so much cannibalism going on at the time because, to start the year, we thought USF was going to win because they beat Boise State to open up the year, and then USF loses, so then we think it's going to be Memphis, and then Memphis loses, so then it's going to be Tulane, and then it went back and forth between Tulane and Memphis.
And even North Texas.
Yeah, my Mean Green. Can't forget about my Mean Green, But it's just, I think until we expand the playoff, it needs to be the best 12 teams in. I think Notre Dame and I think Texas would have put up a better fight against some of these schools and probably would have had better entertainment value.
Right, and it made for a better game. One of the games that was a rematch was Tulane-Ole Miss. 45-10 was the score in the regular season. It looked like a carbon copy of that in the playoff game, 41-10 the final score there in that one. Tulane, though, it was a team that I think John Summerall said after the regular season game that there was some opportunities for them where they just kind of shot themselves in the foot early on. They had some chances there as well in Oxford, but once again, the Rebels, just like they did in the regular season, took advantage.
Gerhard, you played football, and when you rack up over 400 total yards, you should not only score 10 points.
No,
so,
right,
I mean, as you mentioned, the 3 mistakes, the Retzlaff interception there in the first quarter, but at the same time, I mean, Ole Miss came out. And you said this last week, so I'm going to hold you to it. You're like, I don't know how they're going to come out. I think what's going to really tell us is how they start this game. 3 plays, 75 yards, touchdown.
Right. I thought you would be able to get the entire picture from the football game within the first, I would say, 22 minutes of football. You would understand, okay, Tulane is either ready to play or not ready to play. But you mentioned it. They walked, I mean, think about it. 420-something yards is marching up and down the field 4 times. And as you mentioned, you should be able to get more than 10 points when you have that kind of production on the back end. But to give a lot of credit there to Ole Miss.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Ole Miss a little bit later on in our second hour. But, I mean, you got to also give credit to Tulane because they had the offensive idea. They came out with, I think Jake Retzlaff, it hasn't come out that he's entered the portal yet. I think he's a junior. Obviously, with the whole situation in the offseason about him, late addition to the Tulane roster after being let go from BYU. I think he's going to follow John Summerall to Florida, and I think that's why DJ Lagway's in the portal right now, but that's just my opinion. I don't know about yours.
Yeah, it's a good theory. It's a really good theory, and I think that also, too, with Lagway, he will have his pick of the litter, but if he understands that Summerall's coming in with his guy, I would think that he would want to explore different pastures. And you mentioned it. I think Clemson might be the number 1 target for him. Now we can officially say former Tulane coach John Summerall, who's now going to Florida, spoke after the game about their time there against the Rebels in Oxford.
Yeah, the first play was an access throw to a wide receiver. Just don't make a tackle, big gain. I mean, first drive was 3 plays, 75 yards. And we looked a little slow on the perimeter, kind of similar to the first time we played this bunch. And so they're very talented. Hats off to them. They made plays. We didn't make plays. And, some of that was because of them. Some of that was we didn't do a very good job. But, yes, the first 2 drives, it's like you blink and you look up and you're like, it's 14-0. Then we settled in and played pretty good football at times defensively. I thought we got a little more aggressive. The third drive, we got a tackle for a loss on the 1st and 10 to start the drive, and that put them behind the chains and gave us an opportunity to maybe create some momentum defensively. for us to give up those first 2 drives like we did and go in at halftime 17-3, I'm like, all right, we responded, but we just didn't. We couldn't keep doing it the whole game.
Moving over to JMU and Oregon, this was a game that if you literally just watched the first half, you would think, okay, this Oregon team is just going to run away with this one. I think it was 24-6
at the half.
Oh, 34-6.
34-6
34-6 there at the half, and then. But I will say, give JMU a lot of credit. We keep up with the Sun Belt here in the Mobile area because we have South Alabama that's down here. I know a lot of places in and around Next to our nation also are close to Sun Belt Conference programs. But this was a JMU team that did not give up, even though they were down really big. Credit to Bob Chesney and company.
Yeah, and I said I was going to look at the schedule before the next time we talked about this because I wanted to see if UCLA and Oregon played next year.
Oh,
These two coaches could be going up against one another. Which, can we talk about this real quick? Both of these Group of 5 matchups are against future conference opponents.
Oh, that's right.
John Summerall over at Florida.
Right.
I think Ole Miss and Florida play next year.
They do play.
And then now UCLA and
UCLA will play.
I think both of these coaches took their coordinators. I think I saw that come out yesterday, and they're both their offensive and defensive, which I like that because there's no guarantee that the next coaching regime is going to keep
retain
those
guys.
We could talk again about John Summerall and the right way to handle a departure, donating $100,000 to Tulane, but I think you got to give JMU some credit.
For sure.
They covered the spread.
Yeah,
we're big. We're big on the spread here. So at least they covered the spread. Tulane did not. But yeah, unfortunately for them, there was just no match there in the beginning. And it was against third stringers in the second half. But at least you put up some points.
Mm-hmm.
At least you weren't like Texas A&M, who was the only team that didn't score a touchdown this weekend.
That was embarrassing. A lot for Texas A&M at home, especially. And I know the win was crazy. We saw it in the Oklahoma game, and they're in that same kind of part of the country.
That was crazy.
The win was insane there as well. So
we'll talk about that game in hour 2 and the wind and everything, and the missed field goals. I think Texas A&M should have got that guy that kicked the McAfee kick because he was closer than any of the other
on
ones.
game day.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. Bob Chesney obviously facing a lot of talk about whether these Group of 5 teams should be in this college football playoff. Here's the former JMU coach's take.
Yeah, I'm so not involved in that conversation. I'm just trying to prepare our team to come here and play the best football that we possibly can. That's I think there's a conversation that's a little bit above me, and maybe we'll have time to talk about it and we could circle back on that. But tonight, I don't. I think we came here to accomplish a task. We did not play complimentary football. We did not play our best football. There were moments where we did have some I think some really productive plays on offense, defense, special teams all the way through. It just wasn't enough. You had to be elite to hang with this team, and it just wasn't. So, I'd rather not get too deep into that question because I don't. Yeah.
It's a tough spot for him because he's about to leave to go to a Power 4 team. He's going to UCLA. But at the same time, he cut his teeth, so to speak, in the Group of 5. So it makes it. He's kind of in a tough spot there because I think in his heart of hearts he wants to say, yeah, I understand coaching the team that I just coached that we don't necessarily belong. But at the same time, too, looking at it from the other side, like, hey, these two teams in the future do deserve a seat. And I think that he doesn't want his words to be used against him when the College Football Playoff Committee revisits this whole thing anyways and be like, look at this. One of the guys that used to coach there at a Group of 5, he said that they don't belong. Yeah. It was just a tough spot for him, especially at the end of the game.
Because, who knows what UCLA is going to look like next year. Obviously, this year did not go according to plan. Yeah. They got Nico Imalieva over from Tennessee, and they're like, this UCLA is back. We're going to the College Football Playoff. And then that whole
ended quickly.
With Skip and Jerry Neuheisel.
Yeah.
Where did he go again?
I
saw he landed.
Cal Poly. Cal Poly. Skipper did. Or Neuheisel, I'm not sure where Neuheisel left. I know where Silver.
I saw it.
He's the offensive coordinator somewhere.
I think he might be chatting with. Oh goodness, I should have looked this up before we came on. But I thought he was going to potentially stay. But at the same time, I think he's just
with the new coaching staff and whatnot. Yeah, you just try to figure what comes after that. I think Silver, the head coach, the interim coach, ended up going to Cal Poly.
That's what it was.
So he ended up staying in the state though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be a whole lot of fun here. Those two Group of 5 teams could not pull off the upset. The only real upset of the weekend, Alabama came in. They were a favorite for a large part of the week, but they came in as an underdog, a 1.5-point underdog. But they do go on the road to Norman and beat the Oklahoma Sooners. We'll break it down coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us.
No, we didn't expect 50 Cent to show up, but crazy thing about that is we always listen to Mini Man on Friday, so we definitely got some juice right there for sure.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't know that was 50 Cent until later, but I did know that song, so.
You want to feel old? The guy didn't know who 50 Cent was for a half second, but they did listen to Mini Men in Alabama, using that little mini concert there to hype themselves up. They had the Hard to Kill with 50 Cent there. There he is right there. And that was kind of the motto for Brent Venables and the Sooners, the Hard to Kill. 50 Cent wore it, and it was Alabama that ended up, using that momentum for like that between time between the third and fourth quarters and spurning that to a huge win. I don't know how you digested this one, Patrick, but as I was here, we were in the studio and I was doing the 10 o'clock news that day.
Here.
Yeah, you were not here.
I was on the road.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were driving.
I was driving out to Jacksonville, and I'm glad this game was on while I was driving. Which, by the way, I was not like literally staring at it. I just had the radio on, so don't come after me for being a distracted driver. I'm not a distracted driver. Santa sees you even while you're driving. But when I was originally watching this or listening to the game, I was like, okay, John Mateer, he sounds pretty sharp. And then I went back and rewatched the game. I was like, man, he's got the zip on the ball back. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to be a long night for Alabama.
Yeah.
And then they score the quick touchdown, and then it seemed like Ty Simpson, kind of just picked up where he left off in the SEC championship game. And I saw the look in his eyes,
mm-hmm.
and I was like, they're cooked.
Yeah.
Like, in all honesty, they were cooked. Because,
right.
He looked scared. It wasn't as bad as you remember that clip of the Oklahoma State guy and his hands are literally shaking like this when they're down 55-0. That's kind of what it reminded me of. But I was just like, there's just no way they win this game. And then it was the big completion. I think it was the 30-yard gain to Isaiah Horton was the one that really started it. I was like, okay. And then the decision to go for it on, I think, 4th and 2 again.
Second time DeBoer's done this.
Yes, in the last 3 games.
Short, exactly, yeah.
And just being able to fight your way into the end zone, that was obviously huge. And then the drop punt really was the one play that, in my opinion, completely changed this game, because that just allowed the Tide to score 27 unanswered points in the middle quarters. And then whenever you need a big play, just ask Xavier Brown to give you a pick six.
He's going to do it every single time. Yeah.
And speaking of that game, that kind of rolls right into that next stat there. Ty Simpson, 18 for 29, 232 yards and 2 touchdowns. He started the game for 2 for 6. As I mentioned, he didn't look great. But you go back to the Xavier Brown last pick 6 against Tennessee.
Right.
I would argue this is the best Ty Simpson has looked since that Tennessee game.
Probably so, yeah.
Because, I mean, after that, once Alabama scored those 17 points to tie it up at 17, after that it was like, oh, man, he's in a groove.
Yeah.
And they're going to honestly cruise away to this. And, I mean, you could talk about the questionable decision-making late in that game by Oklahoma. We'll have Holden Cruzmark on here in hour number 2 to talk about that.
Yeah.
With the kicking field goals and Tate Sandell. His shorts get a little bit shorter every time he kicks it. Missing both of those, you don't really expect that.
You don't see that often.
Award winner.
No, you don't see that often, especially going into that game. That if you were to pick a kicker to miss kicks, it would be Connor Talty, not him, because Talty was struggling before. And I feel like as Ty Simpson found his groove and the offense found their groove, kind of like they looked like mid-season, I think Talty did the same thing and found his groove as well.
Yeah, and I think you got to give him a ton of credit. Because if you remember, the last time they played Oklahoma, you could kind of make the argument that he was part of the reason why they lost that game. I mean, you can't really throw it all on a kicker for getting a kick blocked in the first half. But,
right.
I mean, it seemed like the fan base was all against him. And, I mean, Connor Talty had a huge game. Ty Simpson, huge game. And honestly, Daniel Hill. Honestly, just throw him out there every time. Against Oklahoma, because he just has great games against Oklahoma.
I was about to say
I don't know what it is, but Oklahoma stops the run so well that just throw him out there every time.
And that was kind of the Achilles heel, so to speak, for Alabama walking into this game. It was like, can they even decently run the football? And Scott Griffin said it on the show this past week that what was driving his frustrations was the fact that not only could they not run, but they were not trying to run. I think they had 7 rushing attempts in the game before against Georgia in the SEC championship game or the Iron Bowl, one of the two. And he understood that, hey, look, even if you aren't running it well, let's just say that you're running it for a yard a carry. At least just try to run the football. And that was his frustration. I think a lot of Alabama fans were in that same boat. We're like, hey, let's just at least try to run the football. And Daniel Hill really stepped up.
Yeah, and I think I said if Jam Miller gets 80 yards on the ground, Alabama wins this game. I think he finished with like 12. So, I mean, that was a little bit off there. Right. But, I mean, Alabama did just enough to win the game. And I think to be able to – I think the final score was 34-24. To be able to put 27 points up, because obviously 7 points came off of the defense. To put up 27 points against that Oklahoma defense with how bad your offense has been playing. I mean, I'm talking putrid. This offense has not been good as of late. To be able to do that is a huge confidence boost. But honestly, a lot of credit does need to go to Kane Womack for those defensive adjustments that were made to help shut down John Mateer and company. But I mean, you were talking about 2 evenly matched teams. Both offenses were struggling. Both defenses were playing so great. But give Kane Womack all the credit in the world, because he deserves it. Yeah,
absolutely so. And even on the pick 6 from Xavier Brown, I was looking at different websites earlier today, and one of the things that I saw was just the way that they diagnosed that, the way they dialed that up, and they basically fooled John Mateer into throwing that pass there. And Xavier Brown goes on, picks it off, and I think that. I know that ties the game. Bama was looking pretty good because it was 17-10. Bama was looking pretty good right before that pick, but I think that pick was the one I was like, okay, it felt like, okay, Alabama was on the right side of the momentum here, and they were going to just carry it over. That ties the game up at 17. But even if they go down by a touchdown, I think they're still in good shape from a momentum standpoint. But no, you're right with Kane Womack in this defense. I think that at the beginning of the season, they were blasted after allowing 200-something plus yards to Florida State.
And Tommy Castellanos.
Right, and you could tell that there's been an emphasis. We talked about this last week. There has been an emphasis on turning the ball over. Taking it away is what they call it. They call it takeaways, not turnovers.
Yeah, come on.
It's like, yeah, he talked to a reporter. If you hadn't heard of the press conference, listen to Kane Wommack's press conference going into this game. He gives you the very clear definition between turnovers and takeaways. Turnovers assumes the fact that the offense gave it to you. Takeaways means you took that thing. That's what he said. That's how he worded it. And so, but they put an emphasis on it. And you saw Deontay Lawson punch the ball out. I know that Mateer ended up getting it back, but then you had Xavier Brown play as well. And I think that once this defense plays that attacking style, it's very dangerous for their upcoming opponent there in Indiana. I know they have a good defense there as well. Right. That's another really interesting matchup there because Indiana's defense is top notch. And if Bama could play the way they did, especially in the second half, I know they'll feel good about themselves as well.
And before we start talking about Indiana, let's hear from Kane Wommack about those defensive adjustments.
Well, I think, we talked about it before the game. There was going to be wrinkles. There were going to be things that they did. And I thought they had a great plan early on. I thought the quarterback played out of his mind in the first half. He was dialed in, did a really good job. We didn't affect him early enough from a pass rush standpoint, and then we started affecting them, and it drastically changed the outcome of the game. And so, just finding ways to just settle in. Let's see what their pictures are. Let's see what their game plan is, what they're going to do, and then being ready to adjust whichever way we needed to. We haven't played a lot of man coverage this year, but that was what we needed to do to win the game, and our DBs were begging for it. I mean, by the time we got to the second half, they wanted it, and that's what you want, right? You want kids that are fighters, that want the ball in their court. They want to be challenged. They want to go challenge people, and our players won this game. They won the game with sheer will.
So there is the defensive coordinator, and I think that he speaks to kind of not necessarily even X's and O's, but he's speaking towards a mindset that this team has right now. And I think that it is very imperative that they keep this mindset as they go up against the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, and this is definitely not going to be any slouch of a matchup. But at the same time, I feel like we have to point this out. It's so interesting that Curt Cignetti was once at Alabama and Kalen DeBoer was once at Indiana. So it's just the roles are flipped. I mean, you talk about the coaching carousel, and I think Cignetti started at IUP up in up near Pittsburgh. Division II. But it's going to be a great matchup. I'm looking forward to it. The early line really isn't in Alabama's favor, but when you compare these two teams, there is one thing that really stands out on this graphic, and it's those rushing yards per game.
Well, one over 250, about 214 yards, close to 215. The other one less than 100. And you don't see that from Alabama teams, especially in the Nick Saban era. Now, I know the running game has changed up a little bit, and you see it across football, from the high schools to the pros. Running has shifted, but you just typically don't see an Alabama team that rushes for less than 100 yards. That just feels beneath their production level.
It almost feels like an insult to Derrick Henry in like those days. And Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs was just there just a few years ago.
Right.
And it's like, you can't even run the ball anymore. I think a big part of it is Jam Miller started the year injured.
Personnel's big,
Personnel's big. I talked about the offensive line struggles basically until your ears start bleeding under Kalen DeBoer, and how sometimes there's a tendency in games where the offensive line underperforms under Kalen DeBoer. So, maybe there's some personnel changes with coaching there in the offseason. I think this win solidifies Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. We don't have to talk about the Michigan
nonsense all over again.
So we don't have to talk about that. We don't have to talk about the Penn State nonsense. But
for at least a week. For at least until they play.
For at least a week. But when you look at this early line, I don't know how to feel about it. 7 points to Indiana. Obviously, Alabama fans didn't really have any great memories the last time they were at the Rose Bowl. Michigan basically ended Nick Saban's career. But 7 points is a little. I don't know.
If I had to give you $1,000 right now for you to pick a side.
Oh, don't throw me on the spot like this.
As of right now. This line is still early. Keep in mind. Speaking of the betting line, keep in mind what happened last time. Alabama was the favorite going all the way up until kickoff. Then the line flipped 3 points. 1.5 on one side, then Oklahoma was 1.5 on the other side. So this line just might be manipulation from Vegas to be able to get money on Alabama or Indiana, whichever side they're trying to get money on, just for it to get closer to a field goal, or maybe even, I don't think Alabama will ever be favored unless just crazy amount of money, unless something happens to Mendoza or whatever throughout the course of the week. I just think that's too many points. I think it's too many points for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, we're about a week away from the game. I will say this. I'll bring this graphic back up. The only way Alabama wins this game, in my opinion, is they stop the Indiana run. I mean, when you're averaging over 200 rush yards per game.
Right.
Which, I was telling you this off air. I think it's crazy that a Heisman winner averaged 241 on an offense that averaged 241 passing yards per game, which I think I saw the stat was 50th in FBS. When your quarterback wins the Heisman, and you have the 50th best passing offense, is just a little bit crazy to me. It just tells you about this year. But if Alabama can stop the run, I think they can, provide a few twists for Fernando Mendoza, because I mean, John Mateer, he came out like the old John Mateer before the thumb injury. If they can put some pressure on, I would expect Kane Womack to go back to the man defense until Omar Cooper basically cooks you. And then you got to go to zone. But I'm looking forward to this. I can't wait until it's New Year's Day and New Year's Eve for all of these quarterfinal matchups. I mean, it's just, I can't wait.
It should be a lot of fun, and I'm really interested. I will watch that line almost probably every day between now and January 1st. I just think it's a lot of points to give to Alabama right now. I think that right now I would not even think twice about putting Alabama plus 7 points. To me, it's just a lot. But like I said, there might be some manipulation there on the front end, though. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Austin, Texas, and catch up with Noah Gross. Stay with us. And welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus here on a Monday, breaking down all things college football playoff, but also talking some basketball as well. Happy to have Noah Gross in with us. Happy holiday week, Noah. First of all, we'll get your basketball or your football takes here in just a moment. Let's start with basketball because the women's team, they continue just to look outstanding, still undefeated there on the season. I believe they're number 2 in the latest AP poll still.
Yeah.
What's your overall take after another big win over South Dakota State?
Yeah, coaches are so good at hyping up the teams they play and acting like it's, like the 95 Bulls. But, I mean, South Dakota State's, a decent mid-major program, but, Texas should have played better than they did, and they still won rather handily. They jumped out to a 12-0 lead, and then the Jackrabbits came right back in it. It's kind of interesting for Texas, right, guys, because their head coach, Vic Schaefer, talks about, and he's been coaching a long time in a lot of different places. He says this is the most difficult non-conference slate he's ever been a part of, which I'm not doubting, but they've only had 2 true road games, and one was in the state of Texas where it was at UTRGV down in the Valley, and there were more Texas fans there than I think it's Vaquero fans. And then so this was their actual first road game where it was more fans that were rooting against them than for them. So it was a different kind of experience, and I think that was new for this team, which there's a lot of new faces. So South Dakota State, I'll keep wanting to say San Diego State every time I think about SDSU. Man, it's driving me nuts. But yeah, Texas was kind of keeping it close, like a 4-point game late in the first half, early in the second half, but they pulled away. And it's, you're a good team when you can beat a good team on the road pretty handily, and your coach is like, I don't think we played well. And that was Vic Schaefer yesterday, but it's just, they're so good. And as I'm sure you guys have heard from Roger before, Vic Schaefer's teams always play better late in the season. He just has the team ascending when it matters most. And I've never seen his teams be this good this early. So that could be, you could be a glass half empty and you're like, well, they're peaking too early. Or you could be like, this is the best team he's ever had here. So I tend to think on the latter side. This team is so special right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you beat South Carolina, who just played in the national championship just a few months ago, when you beat them in the non-conference schedule, that definitely helps. But I remember Roger, I'm sorry, I do not remember exactly the player's name, but I know she was from South Dakota, and that's the whole reason why this game was scheduled in the first place. I felt like when I heard about this game and Texas going to South Dakota State, I feel like they had more to lose than more to gain. So was there ever any talk about this game potentially being taken off the schedule, or was it just going to be played out?
Especially interesting because that player's not even on the team this year anymore. She was, and I don't blame you for not knowing the name, because even if you saw it in front of you, I would kill to try to hear you try to pronounce it. It's the first 3 letters are NDJ. It's Jacqueline Wenentanda, who transferred out of the Texas program as well. So no, not that I heard of, and I think Vic Schaefer wanted the test like this. I'm sure it wasn't most ideal traveling conditions and everything, but he's giving his group some well-deserved rest. They have one more non-conference game next Sunday before they get into SEC play. So I think they get 4 full days off to hang out with family and everything. So it was kind of, if you're going to have this trip, I think it's kind of a good time to have it. And like we said, there's not going to be many Texas fans that make that trip to Brookings, South Dakota. So while it's maybe not on the road to face a Big Ten team and more easy travel, I think it was a unique experience that I think Vic Schaefer, who been doing this a while, knows how to kind of pull the right strings, was probably happy to try to have his team go through.
I believe Roger did make the trip, right? How did that go for him?
Yeah, I was really hoping for more intel. I'm like, oh man, I just saw Buffalo. No, he just, when Roger goes on a trip, here's the situation. Fly in, go to practice with the team, get some version of bar food, like chicken sandwich, burger that you'll later complain about, bed, game. Nothing going to see the town. When Texas played at Alabama in football a couple years ago, and we flew into Birmingham, and I got there early, 2 or 3 hours before Roger. I got the rental car, and I went to the Birmingham Museum of Art, which was outstanding, by the way.
Yeah.
Free. I was just looking for something to do. He was astonished by that, as if he was like, what are you doing? You should just be waiting. And I'm like, well, I'd rather see something here and get some local cuisine. So yeah, shout out to the Birmingham Museum of Art. It was beautiful. But yeah, he's more business focused on the road.
That's hilarious. And as a Birmingham native, you're dead on that. That museum is awesome. The McWayne Center is really good. And so it's two different travel styles, which I really love. He's probably been all over the country, so he's like, you know what? I've touched my feet.
He goes on those golfing trips.
Oh,
He's got time for that.
He's got it. You mentioned the fact that it's there's one more game before the SEC slate opens up, and the fact that this team has not played kind of a true road game against a really tough opponent. In the first 5 games in the SEC, it's at LSU and it's at South Carolina for this team, and there's 2 of the top 5 teams there in the country. How do you feel that he will have to get his team ready for hostile environments in league play against the top teams?
Yeah, I think he's probably so fired up for it. And also he's, as I said, coaches and Vic Schaefer kind of leading the charge on this are so good at acting like their opponent is Goliath. Mm-hmm. They're also good at acting like their level of adversity is higher than everybody else's.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how injured his team is, which his team has been a bit beaten up, but it's just largely some depth pieces, and they're getting healthier. So I think they're in a much better spot health-wise right now, so they can kind of rotate more players in when it's going to be a more intense physical game in the SEC, whereas he's right. A lot of their main 3 guards have been playing like almost 40 minutes a game, and Rory Harmon, Madison Booker, and Jordan Lee's kind of elevated into that like trio role for her as well. So now they have Brianna Preston back, who's I think my favorite basketball player to watch, men or women. She's just electrifying. She was 4 for 4 shooting yesterday with 9 points. So to have her back and kind of spell some of those guards, and she can come in and provide such a spark, that's going to be big in the SEC. Last year when Vanderbilt came to town, Vanderbilt was ranked very, very good team and one of the best players in the country. That's when Brianna Preston had one of her breakout games and just like totally in an energized environment rattled off like 8 points and was like screaming and pumping everybody up. So to have her back, I think is massive for SEC play.
Let's spin it towards the gridiron here. I mean, it was a hectic weekend. I think one of the craziest few games. I think the Texas A&M Miami game was a flip of what we thought the Alabama-Oklahoma game was. But what was your biggest takeaway from this past weekend?
Well, one, I want to say thank you for not asking me about the Texas men's team because I had nothing to provide. They haven't played since we last talked.
Here's the thing. Yeah, they haven't played since we last talked, and they also played Lemoyne, which is up by where I'm from, and they beat them by 40. So I'm glad they beat Lemoyne. You know, we're trending in the right direction.
Okay, Lemoyne, is that in PA or is that New York?
That's New York. That's Syracuse.
Okay, I'm on a quest. I know
Okay.
One of my friend's parents went to Lemoyne, and I can't figure out who it was. I've been asking around, so ever since that game was on the schedule for Texas, I've been like, did your parents go to Lemoyne? Did you? So one day I will find that out. But as far as the football this past weekend, first my biggest takeaway, the haters were right. JMU and Tulane, no business being there. But I think that's what you guys have been talking about. My thing I want to say, though, is I tweeted this out, too. Just because a game is low scoring does not mean it's a bad football game. Like everybody was like, oh, man, Texas A&M, Miami, how'd they let these two teams in? It was like a good game. It was just like some bad field goal kicking, some bad special teams, and good defense, which both these teams have. Miami's defensive front is incredible. Texas A&M's defense has been outstanding this entire year, except one half against South Carolina. Texas kind of shredded them a bit in the second half. But Mike Elko's defense is legitimate. I don't know how great Miami's offense is. I'm not a big Carson Beck fan, but for them to do what they did against Marcel Reed and that Texas A&M offense was incredible. I'm a big believer in the leap that Marcel Reed has taken this year. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I thought that was a great game. I had fun watching that, and I was tired of people being like, this game's awful and having no fun, because I was like, look at what's coming up after this. This is way better than the next two games.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you this. Since we were talking just a few weeks ago about how all of Texas's rivals are in.
You stole my question.
How does it feel? What's the vibe like in Austin since Oklahoma loses and then Texas A&M loses the next day?
It's actually making me so mad because I don't care either way. Like we remain impartial. This is not Maryland in the college football playoff. That'll be next year. But with having Texas in or Texas not in, they're acting like they won, and like all these, and like love the Texas, love the Texas SIDs and these fans and some of these media outlets that are fan based as well. But they're just like, oh, Texas won a playoff game last year and A&M hasn't, and I'm just like, okay, relax, man. Like, and then it's like just the level of hate watching is crazy. But I will say, for A&M to do this and have like their best season in decades and not win a playoff game at home, and you're still 0-2 against Texas, since you joined the SEC, since Texas rejoined the SEC, that's a big issue. And because it's like, yes, you've gotten so much better, but what have you accomplished? You haven't made the SEC championship game. You haven't beaten your biggest rival. You haven't won a playoff game. Because them getting in, it was like, okay, you haven't done any of that, but you have everything in front of you. Even one win against Miami, I think, would have silenced a lot of people. Damn. So the fact that they didn't is a pretty massive red flag for this program. That, I mean, because those are the hypotheticals everyone says, right? It's like, for Texas fans, it was posed a while ago. It's like, would you rather win a national championship as a 2-loss team and have those 2 losses be to A&M and Oklahoma, or would you rather like not make the playoff but beat A&M and Oklahoma? And I'm like, the fact that's even a discussion is insanity to me. So for Texas A&M to have kind of neither of those is not great, I would say.
Well, I'll say this: since you cover Texas, you don't really cover Texas A&M so much. Mike Elko got that extension this year. Do you think that was a little bit premature?
No, I am an Elko believer.
You are an Elko.
He has zero personality, and sometimes that's good. Like, he is just man, I hate listening to his press conferences. It is, first of all, he just sounds like judgmental. Every question thrown his way is just like, ugh. He's just like scoffs. So don't love that, but I think his just like vibe and aura is exactly what College Station needs, because Jimbo is just like a used car salesman, snake oil salesman, as people used to call him. So Elko seems to get the most out of his team and has he has a lot of Sark to me, where they are so good at finding, and Sark struggled with this the past couple of years, I'll be honest. But Sark a couple of years ago, especially like the first year they made the college football playoff, was so good at finding this specific player is going to fit in the portal. And everyone could tell some of these receivers they got were going to be great, but like how they fit and how they were able to elevate Marcel Reed was incredible. Now, losing Colin Klein, who I don't think called a very good game in the playoff, that could be an issue because Elko's a defensive coach. Right. But I do think the way he's turned that thing around is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. As you take a look at the next round of games moving forward, do you see any upsets? Do you see Miami, Ohio State? As of right now, Ohio State is about a 10-point favorite. Oregon, Texas Tech. That by seeding, Texas Tech is the higher seed. However, Oregon's a slight 1.5-point favorite. Of course, you got Bama, Indiana. Indiana about a touchdown favorite. Ole Miss, Georgia in a rematch there. And Georgia's about a 7-point favorite. Do you see any upsets there in that second round, knowing what happened last year with all the teams that got those first-round byes all losing?
Yeah, I could see. Well, I've been an Indiana believer for a long time, so I think Indiana will win. I could see Miami beating Ohio State, or at least keeping that game very close. That defense is so good, and I don't know if Ohio State's faced. I mean, the two best defenses they faced this year, they didn't do much on offense at all. Texas held them to 14 points, and Indiana, that was a very low-scoring game as well, and Miami's up there with them. So I could see Miami winning that game. And I do think Ole Miss, I would probably pick Ole Miss to beat Georgia. Just the energy they came out with. I know Kirby's just like the king of coaching mastermind tricks, but I could easily see both the I'm going to say 7 and 6 seeds winning because I don't want to.
Yes, good job. Good job.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Get that nonsense out of here.
Those would be my two selections, because I don't think Tech and Oregon would be a real upset either way. I would probably pick Tech, but that's such a close game there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much, man. I know it's been a crazy busy time for you, crazy busy month overall, but now you get a bit of a downtime. Safe travels. Have a great, great Christmas. Thank you so much for joining us here.
All right, gentlemen. Happy holidays. Go Terps.
Absolutely. Go Terps indeed. Noah Gross joining us from KXAN.
We didn't ask him about the Terps.
I know.
He probably didn't want to talk about it.
I know.
They lost another close one.
Did they lose again?
They lost again.
Oh, jeez.
They're the Arkansas of the Big Ten.
Our boy can't catch a break over there. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, take a look at the latest top 25 poll in the AP to close out hour number 1. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus on a Monday, breaking down all things in the world of college football. Happy to have Noah Gross on this past hour. But also we'll talk a little basketball now, because next week everybody now flips into conference play, and I think everybody's been really excited about that. So I think in the non-conference part of the season, what you really get, to me, and we saw a lot of this, you get like a lot of great ranked matchups. I think we had like 40 in the first like maybe 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Alabama played some tough opponents. Auburn played some tough opponents. We saw it throughout the gamut of the year. But then when you get to conference play, it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world, so you don't have anything to compare it against. So you have to look back at these non-conference games. So these polls, while they might not matter in the grand scheme, it does show you kind of where a team is after the first maybe 9-10 games.
Well, I'll say this. We're exiting the part of the year where it's like kind of like a dead zone, because I mean, you talk about the football conference championships, but this is also the part in the basketball schedule where you've got like 2 or 3 more cupcakes before you start conference play.
Right.
What the Maui Invitational used to be is now what the Players Era is.
Right.
And I'm excited for what that's going to look like next year, because this year it was great with all of those elite non-conference matchups. But we're starting to get to the point where it's like, okay, here we go. Here comes the transition to, we're going to talk about these college football playoff games.
Right.
We'll stop talking about bowl games after January 2nd, just about the playoff, and then it's just, we're only talking about conference games starting,
right.
I think it's the 3rd.
I think the SEC starts like that first Tuesday, either that first Tuesday or Wednesday night. After the calendar turns 2026.
But I mean, as you mentioned, here is a look at the latest poll: Iowa at 25, USC out in California at 24, Georgia at 23, Florida right ahead of Georgia, and the Virginia at 21.
Who's to think? I mean, like, who would have thought after 10 games, 11 games, a team that you don't see in this poll, the Auburn Tigers, after getting destroyed by Purdue, that Auburn, who was the #1 overall seed a year ago, not even in the top 25 anymore, and the Georgia Bulldogs, who I told you a couple of weeks ago, when they scored 100-plus points, I was like, this is Georgia. This is a different-looking Georgia team here, and they are in the same recruiting ground as far as the way they get their talent. But Georgia right now really lighting it up.
Not only did you talk about Auburn, but I think if you were to say that same thing, hey, Georgia's only going to be 1 spot behind Florida, the defending national champion.
Right.
Be like, what? You're out of your mind. But I mean, kudos to the Bulldogs, and there's something brewing over there in Athens.
No, there certainly is. They're 10-1 so far on the season. Inside the top 20 we go here. Illinois and Tennessee, which is ironic because they'll play a game against each other
on the gridiron.
And on the gridiron there. Also played basketball as well earlier on in the year.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked that Illinois is behind Tennessee after
beating them.
them.
Yeah. And I know Illinois lost. Oh, they lost the third game.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. So they did lose the third game.
And
so
then I know Arkansas lost this past weekend as well.
Right. So
take away the AR, and then you've got Kansas right in front of them, and then Louisville.
Yeah, and Louisville was a team that we saw earlier in the year. Obviously, got a nice play, got a nice game against Kentucky earlier in the season. And to me, I won't be a bit surprised if all 4 of these teams, all 5 of these teams, maybe outside of Illinois, actually keep Illinois in there, if all 5 are not within the top 16 overall seeds, getting a top 4 seed. Any one of these teams can make a run. I mean, obviously you have a blue blood there in Kansas, but then also Tennessee, I feel like they're getting it together as of right now. And we've already seen Louisville. I know that they've had some bad losses here lately, but it's not a bad basketball team.
Yeah, you definitely can't count out Pat Kelsey and crew. Inside the top 15, Texas Tech, Alabama, they're at 14 after a little bit of an interesting one against Kennesaw State this past weekend.
Yeah, they played. It was a game played in Huntsville, Alabama, kind of a neutral site for both teams. Kennesaw, of course, like being right outside of Atlanta, and then Alabama. So Alabama likes to play a lot of these games in Birmingham and in Huntsville and a couple other venues just to get their fans out.
Came to be pretty close there towards the end.
Yes, exactly.
I think I saw Alabama. I didn't watch yesterday's game by any means, but I think I saw they were up like 30 in the first half, and then it was
ended up being an 11-point game.
I was like, they're going to pull away. Nate Oates has got this, but it's definitely a little bit of a concern there in Tuscaloosa. Nebraska at 13, looking for they're the only P5 team without a win in the NCAA tournament. Which is
really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I saw that stat last week.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that just blows my mind. And then North Carolina, they've reloaded. And then how about Vanderbilt as the highest-ranked SEC team after dominating Wake Forest this past weekend?
This is the Vandy team. In my opinion, this has been the surprise of the entire, not of the entire SEC.
Tyler Tanner's good.
No question.
He's so good.
No question. Mark Byington is doing a great job over there. They're still undefeated. They're 12-0, up 2 spots. But they were the highest-ranked SEC team last year. They're the highest-ranked SEC team once again this year. They'll be really fun to watch as we go into SEC play to see just how real this is, so to speak.
I know we talked about Otega Owe as the preseason SEC Player of the Year, and he hasn't really played up to that potential at all. Can we see Tyler Tanner as the potential SEC Player of the Year?
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's just been so good. I think he's a freshman, too.
Yes.
I think he scored 29 yesterday against Wake Forest. And, you know, you can play the matchup game all you want. Wake Forest took Michigan to overtime.
Right.
And then, you know, Vanderbilt blows them out by 30, which is just unreal. But inside the top 10 we go. A.J. DeBonta and BYU, they're at 10. Michigan State at 9. Houston 8. Gonzaga at 7. And Duke, after suffering their first loss, at 6.
Yeah, Duke's an interesting case study because they probably had the Player of the Year going into the season. But how long do you ride the freshman and Cam Boozer as they move forward? I think Gonzaga, when they play their best, is one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion. Houston's interesting because Houston and Auburn played a 1-point game earlier this season over in Birmingham, and they still obviously will be very, very good as they march on. And as you mentioned, the freshman for BYU is awesome as well.
And then Purdue, UConn, Iowa State, Michigan, Arizona.
Michigan, Arizona, 1-2 above everybody. Hour number 2, Southeast Sports Plus continues after the break.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Pete Golding is 1 for 1 as a coach, as a head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels. Big 41-10 win over Tulane in the college football playoff. A lot of questions going into this one. how Ole Miss would fare losing Lane Kiffin to LSU. Well, so far, so good, as they now prepare for the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus, hour number 2 here on this Monday. Early happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick, this is a really interesting situation for Ole Miss because all the talking points going into this game were the two coaches on the opposite sidelines. Both programs going through a coaching change. One was like, this is the way to handle it in the Tulane situation where, John Summerall wearing both hats. The other one was the way not to handle it. Yeah, 2 phones and everything else. The other one was the way not to handle it with Lane Kiffin and all the distractions there. A lot of potential distractions, but great job there for Coach for Pete Golding and company to be able to keep the guys, level-headed, ready, and they executed on Saturday.
Well, I mean, I go back to his speech to the players after Lane Kiffin officially left for LSU on that Sunday right after Black Friday. And I was just like, man, this guy is fired up. Just a complete 180 from what, Lane Kiffin is in these press conferences and stuff like that.
Right.
And, Pete Golding has to say, I gotta watch the cussing and like stuff like that, and like all of his press conferences. And I mean, he is the guy that Ole Miss needs right now, though.
Yeah.
And I think he had those guys fired up. And they listened to the noise, and everyone was like, yeah, man, there's so much distraction around this program right now. I think Tulane's just gonna, honestly, I think they might win this game. Ole Miss kind of pulled away late in the first game. John Summerall's going to Florida. He's got a great offense there. Jake Retzlaff's a former P4 quarterback over at BYU. I think they win this game. And as we mentioned in hour number 1, it took 3 plays going 75 yards for Ole Miss to go up 7-0. And at that point, I think I texted you. I was like, yeah, this team's going to the net.
It's over.
Which is a little bit of an overreaction.
It might be, but the fact that they were able to come right out of the gate like that, and they had that momentum moving forward, your pick might come true, where this Ole Miss team can just use that momentum moving forward. Right. And I think that player 1 to player 100, they're the best team in college football? I do not. Are they playing about the best as you possibly can with the extra added incentive of, being able to show that it's not a Lane Kiffin built organization?
Yes.
I do think that's the case. And so I do, that's not crazy to me to think that this team can use this game to make a run. It just felt like I said at the beginning last week, I said, hey, this team will show you what they are in the first few minutes of the game. Right. I don't think they were able to claw themselves out of a hole had Tulane gone up in that game.
No, and I think we'll talk a little bit about the next game against Georgia at the Sugar Bowl here in just a few minutes. But one thing that we did find out this weekend is that Lane Kiffin is worth approximately 4 points because they beat him 41-10 instead of 45-10 like the regular season. But can we talk about the job that Charlie Weiss Jr. just did?
Oh, yeah. He called a great game.
I mean, there was so much talk about Lane Kiffin's not going to be the play caller and this and that and, what's this offense going to look like? But the job that Charlie Weiss Jr. did for this Ole Miss team, obviously a 41-10 win. Trinidad Chambliss, man, this guy is just unreal. 318 total yards. Didn't have as great of a game as he did the first time around, but, it's hard to follow up one good performance with another against the same team, no matter what level they're at. And then, as we mentioned in hour number 1, Tulane over 400 total yards and just 1 touchdown and a field goal.
Yeah, so this was a dominating performance, really from Jump Street. But I think if you're Ole Miss, you have to be thinking long and hard about what this means for the program moving forward. Because if Trinidad Chambliss does come back to this team, and Pete Golding is obviously coming back to this team, and if they can retain a lot of that coaching staff, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the expectation next year is, hey, we deserve another seat at this table and be able to make another run at the college football playoff. I just think that in most coaching situations, when you lose a guy like a Lane Kiffin, who had such a positive impact on the team, the natural thought is this team is going to take a step back. There's going to be a natural regression. I don't think that way with Ole Miss. I think that they can just continue to carry that momentum, which is different in college sports, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember exactly his name, but they got the guy coming over from East Carolina, and East Carolina had a pretty good offense this year. And then they've got Joe Judge still as quarterback's coach, which I still think Joe Judge is he should get more credit for developing not only Trinidad Chambliss but also Jackson Dart in the last few years. It didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, it didn't really work out at all for the Giants. But, I mean, Marcus Freeman's now being thrown out there for that job.
The favorite. Is he still the favorite?
Yeah, he's officially the favorite. And I'm like, dude, just stay at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the Giants and the Jets, just stay as far away from them as possible. You don't want to go to that. I mean, you're just setting yourself up for failure. If Brian Dable couldn't make it work, you definitely can't make it work. But anyways, besides the point, Frank Wilson now coming over as a running backs coach. We officially have that trade from general manager and running backs coach to both LSU and Ole Miss. The one going, the two going to LSU was pretty much expected because I mean Lane was like, "Hey, come with me, or else you won't have a job." But I think that Frank Wilson going up to Ole Miss was a little bit of a shocker. But Trinidad Chambliss, I in my opinion, I know I've talked about how I went to an Ole Miss game once.
The South Carolina
game. Mm-hmm. I think for him, I think he should stay because I have a feeling that Lane Kiffin's going to try to go for the big fish and just try to get Lagway or Sam Levitt or maybe even Josh Hoover. I almost said Max Duggan. Yeah. That was almost bad. But Trinidad Chambliss with a great game, 23 for 29, 282 pass yards, that 93.3 QBR. I mean, if he does, my guess is he's going to file for a waiver. I don't know if he's going to get it. But at the same time, why don't we have this conversation? Why is he trying to come back? Why doesn't he just try to get drafted? Because all you're doing coming back is risking injury,
right?
And potentially,
and it's a deeper quarterback class next time around. You have to assume that Arch is coming out. You'd have to assume if Ty Simpson comes back to school, he'll be coming back. I think he
gets drafted. Yeah, probably 3rd or 4th round.
Right.
I mean, I don't think your stock's going to be higher than this just because of that class next year.
Right. I do think that a lot of it will depend on how they do here in this college football playoff. I think if they lose if they make it all the way to the championship game, he'll be talked about so much, and there'll be so much more footage on him against great defenses that I do think that he'll be able to make a run there to increase his draft stock enough to where, hey, if he's going to balance out, am I making a decision to come back to school and make, let's call it $3 million? Or if you are going to go pro and make the equivalent, maybe a little bit less than that, as a 3rd round, 4th round pick, I think that's where it is. I think that if he doesn't think that he's a first round pick's typically guaranteed around $20 million. Right. And if you can stay in school and still make, a fraction of that, I think that would be the case. But I'm right there with you. I think that you strike while the iron's hot. Yeah. And his situation is iron's hot right now.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't a top 5 quarterback taken off the board this year, just because this year's quarterback class is so weak.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be Mendoza going number 1 overall unless the Titans win. Well, no, the Titans just won this past weekend, so I mean they're not going to get the number 1 overall pick.
It'll be
the Giants potentially.
Yeah, Giants will have a spot.
Which we keep hearing, will they trade Jackson Dart?
That's all the talk has been.
I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I'd like that. Get Jackson Dart out of my division. I think he's. I think I've said on the show a few times, I think Jackson Dart's going to be the best quarterback out of last year's class.
Me too.
As much as I want to respect Cam Ward, I think the pieces are starting to align here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you played a Chiefs team that was on their 3rd quarterback, Gardner Minshew.
Right.
Thankfully, did not tear his ACL, so you didn't go 2 straight weeks with an ACL tear out of your quarterback. Yeah. But I don't know. I think Trinidad should at least explore the draft.
Going into the draft, because whoever the new coach is in New York will want his own guy, obviously. So that's the reason why you get a lot of the trade rumors for him leaving that area. But I'm with you, though.
I tell you what, there's another guy that's going to be a hot commodity, whether it's this year or it's next year. It's Kewan Lacey.
Oh,
this
no
guy's
question.
Unreal.
Yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think it was about the middle of the year he was flirting with being the top rusher. He was one of the top rushers in the SEC alongside Ahmad Hardy and a few others. But he is such a dynamic weapon for what they try to do offensively, because it's not, to me, they don't see them as a dominating running team, but he has dominating games, if that makes sense. It's not like they just line it up and do what they used to do in Alabama with Trent Richardson and Derrick Henry and all those guys. But he is such a integral piece to what they try to do offensively to help open things up for Chambliss and company.
I think Trinidad being a dual threat quarterback also helps open up the run game. And when we talk about Winnie Watkins and Harrison Wallace out on the perimeter there, it definitely helps having those weapons. I think Ole Miss might have locked up their wide receivers coach for the future too, and he's like a players. He's a players type of guy. So I don't necessarily want the Ole Miss season to be over by any means, but I'm looking forward to seeing who stays and who actually enters the portal and follows Kiffin to LSU, because I honestly think it's not going to be as many people as some might think, just especially because they had to deal with this basically the entire back half of the season,
right?
And all they did was just win a bunch of games, blow out a couple teams. I think the closest call was probably against Florida,
right.
I mean, maybe for a little bit the South Carolina game was like, you know, what is Trinidad doing here? But I think the biggest thing when you look ahead towards this next game is that both Trinidad Chambliss and Keywan Lacey avoid injury, because Keywan came down hard in the first half, kind of holding his ribs a little bit. It later came out that he had a shoulder problem, and then Trinidad was a little shaken up at the end of the first half.
Yeah, and you kind of wanted these guys to stay healthy, as you said. But also, too, about the transfer portal, I think if they win on January 1st. The portal opens on January 2nd. You won't have a lot of guys that enter because they are now seeing themselves 2 wins away from a national championship and doing it without Lane Kiffin. So it's like you have proof of concept, so to speak. You have proof of concept like, hey, we don't need these guys. It's us. And like you said, I think that Pete Golding's not going anywhere. And then one of the smartest things Ole Miss did was to say he's not the interim coach, he's the permanent coach.
Correct.
And so it does feel like there's a lot more stability now with Pete Golding there. And then if they can once again win on New Year's Day, I feel like you're in a good spot there if you're an Ole Miss fan.
Yeah, and Pete Golding is going to be in Oxford next year, and he's been trying hard to keep one coordinator in Oxford. It's probably not going to work. And Charlie Weiss Jr., let's hear what he had to say about his offensive coordinator following the win over Tulane.
I had zero concern with Charlie Weiss calling this game for this one reason. Charlie Weiss could not afford not to call a hell of a game. All right, all he's heard, right, his whole life, Lane Kiffin's office, Lane Kiffin's office, Lane Kiffin's office. So this is his one opportunity, right, for people to realize Charlie Weiss calls the offense, right, just like he's done all year, and he did a great job of tonight. So I had no concern on that, because the last thing Charlie wanted to do is come out here and lay an egg, all right, because then whose offense is it? Yeah, you be writing about it. Whose offense is it? That's right. Did you say his name? Whose offense is it? Okay. No, you just said Kiff's. Yeah, because he didn't score any points, so Kiff wasn't here. Right, so then now Charlie doesn't call the plays. So Charlie does a great job, and there was zero concern with him. Like I said, from the very beginning, he didn't get on that plane with any doubt that he was going to coach us in the game, because that's who he is. All right, so he did a great job.
A lot of coach speak when it comes to press conferences, and you will just get a lot of guys that are they dance around the edges of the truth, and then there's some guys who just talk about the truth as it really is, and that to me is the most honest assessment of Charlie Weiss, because he was pointing out the elephant in the room. The fact that all the writers would say, well, this is Lane Kiffin's offense, and making it seem like Charlie Weiss did not have as much of an impact.
Yeah.
He hit it on the head, saying, no, there was pressure for him to call a good game. He couldn't afford to not call a good game, because then it's all tarnished from there on out that you're just holding the water for Lane Kiffin.
I think the only difference if Lane Kiffin were calling the plays in this game is we probably would have seen a few more trick plays. Like that's just what Lane Kiffin does with his offenses. And I mean, he almost reminds me of Kellen Moore, the now head coach of the Eagles or of the Saints. Yeah. I mean, when Kellen Moore was in Dallas, we saw Dallas do all of these trick plays and everything. And, everyone was like, he's an offensive genius. But when they wouldn't work, I mean, these offenses were not good at all.
Exactly.
And so that's why I think Charlie Weiss Jr. had something to prove here this weekend. And not only that, but, I mean, he kind of did earn his boss $250,000 there. But his boss is going to be hoping that they can win this next one so he can earn some more money. And it's going to be a rematch of another rematch for Ole Miss against the Georgia Bulldogs, who just won the SEC for what feels like the 1 billionth time in the last 5 years.
Ever since Kirby got there.
Yeah.
It's a big one there for Ole Miss and Georgia. I think this was a really interesting game, because obviously you look back at what happened in that first game between these two teams. Obviously, it was a really high-scoring game between Ole Miss and Georgia. I was really anticipating that matchup, because there was a few it felt like for Ole Miss there was a few teams that had their number, so to speak. Alabama obviously being one, Florida being one, and then Georgia. And I think that this is now kind of a chance to show the world that they don't have a Georgia problem anymore.
Well, I mean, when you go back to this game, obviously it was the only loss on the season for Ole Miss, but I will say this. It was 43-35. Gunnar Stockton threw 4 pass touchdowns. You can easily make the argument that these teams aren't the same as they were.
For sure.
But I will say this. Since Georgia lost that game between the hedges to Alabama, the biggest test they've had was, in my opinion, against this Ole Miss team.
Ole Miss, yeah.
And you could easily make the argument that Ole Miss should have won this game.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talked about, it seemed like the only thing we talked about leading up to this game was Trinidad Chambliss and his entire D2 career played against a combined 91,000 people.
Right.
And then he played against 91,000 people in that game alone.
Uh-huh.
So I think this game, neutral site in New Orleans, a rematch. Charlie Weiss Jr. is still going to be there. He just proved that he can still call the offense. He doesn't need Lane Kiffin, even though Lane's going to be probably 2 hours away up in Baton Rouge watching this game, trying to see if he can make some money. I think Ole Miss honestly wins a rematch just based off the fact of it's so hard to beat the same team twice. And Georgia, I mean, yeah, they dominated Alabama. But I don't know. It's just so hard to beat a team twice. That's like the one thing that's like trumping my decision right now.
It's a weird Georgia team to try to handicap because like you take the Tennessee game, they go up and down the field with Tennessee, and then they take the Georgia Tech game, which I know is a rivalry game. They score 16 points there.
Right.
It just feels. I'm really interested to see the game plan going into this. Yeah. Does Kirby Smart is his game plan to just take the ball out of Trinidad Chambliss' hands and just say, hey, we're going to play a ground and pound style? Or do they say, hey, look, we've run it up and down I was about to say the court. It feels like basketball on grass. Run up and down the field like we did against Tennessee because they think, okay, we had that kind of guy that could do it. Because I feel like Kirby feels that they can play any way that you want to, like any way that the other team wants to. So he wants to be able to dictate it the way he will. So I don't know the over under on this one. I'm gonna go.
Well, I'll tell you what. Georgia's a touchdown favorite, which I think you just talked about Indiana getting a lot of points. That's a lot of points. I honestly am surprised this isn't closer to 4 like what we saw in some of the first round matchups.
Right.
This should be 4 in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say a 4.
I would take Ole Miss at +7 while you can.
Yes, because I think that the number is going down. There's going to be a lot of love for Georgia. I think some public money. This game might land 5. I think it'll swing probably all the way to about 4, maybe land 5, possibly 6. But when we get to the early parts of these, the early lines, a lot of it is feeling out where the professional bettors are, because a lot of times it's not your Billies and Joes that are betting these games early. The line gets manipulated early by the big money, and then towards the end you play it the way that the public is. But the over/under, I had to go back and look at it. It's 55.5. So they're thinking.
I like that.
Yeah. So I mean, they're thinking. I mean, there will be some points here in this game. I'm just interested to see how Georgia does this after a very long layoff, because it would have been close to a month.
I'll point out a couple things. Georgia. You can throw the pass rush against Alabama out the side because, I mean, Alabama just doesn't have a good run game by any means. So they can just stack the box and just put all the pressure on Ty Simpson in the world. I think the pass rush is still a little bit questionable.
Sure, yeah.
And Trinidad's good at escaping the pocket and using his legs. Ty Simpson's really not that guy.
No, he's not.
We've seen that pretty much the entirety of this year. But you flip it on the other side and you look at this game against Tulane for Ole Miss, they still cannot stop the run. And that's the one thing that's like kind of having me like, they have arguably, I'd make the argument they have the best offense in all of college football right now.
I'd agree, yeah.
The most explosive offense in college football at least.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit shaky on the defensive side, and their head coach is now the defensive coordinator, and he allowed 400 yards to Tulane. So there's just a little bit of uneasiness, I'd say, on that side of the ball. But I think the offense can, kind of like in baseball, how you can like outslug your pitching woes. I think maybe the offense can outslug the defensive woes, and I won't say it's going to be like the first game where it's 43-35, but it's going to come down to who has the ball last.
Yeah.
And it usually does at this time of year.
Especially with these matchups with these two teams that know each other as well as they do. It's as you mentioned, it's a neutral site game, no longer a campus games. I do think that you could take that momentum though into those neutral site games.
I'll be there
to the Sugar Bowl, and yes, I
will be there. I'll be in section 600. So if you want to come say hi, I'll say hi.
Love it. You'll be there. So will Pete Golden. He talked about the Sugar Bowl after their big win over Tulane.
I'm most excited. My brother had a second child last week, William, that I have not seen yet, and they live in New Orleans. And so I get to go see my nephew. I've got a niece, but this is my first nephew. that I'm super pumped up about. But, I was born and raised in Hammond. Obviously, recruiting-wise, we like to take a 5-hour Geographical region and go recruit from. So we got a lot of guys from Louisiana, South Mississippi, Mobile area and all that. So I think that's really good for our players, and then obviously our fans. We got a big Jackson group, South group, on the coast and all that. So I think New Orleans is a place everybody enjoys going to visit, and it's a great venue. The Sugar Bowl does an unbelievable job. We've been there several times at several different places. So we're going to be challenging a really good Georgia team, but it's a great venue, great place to play, and great food.
Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we will head over to College Station, another one of those big games that I think that if you were asking random people about who would be the favorite or who would be the most popular upset pick, it would have been Miami. They get it done over Texas A&M. We'll have that and more next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Had a trio of SEC teams take the field in the first round of the college football playoff, and Ole Miss is moving on, Alabama is moving on, but Texas A&M, they were the highest ranked SEC team for a very long time. They are now watching the rest of the college football playoff with you and I. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. Gerhard Mathangani, Patrick Walsh. And Patrick, this was a game that we kind of joked around that this is, if you were just to take blind scores of what the weekend looked like, I think 90% of people would have voted 10-3. That's the Alabama-Oklahoma score. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was the Hurricanes and the Aggies there going to College Station. This was kind of a shocker to me as far as the way this one played out, considering how Texas A&M had played, especially offensively.
Well, I mean, you look at that score. It was the first college football playoff game to be scoreless at halftime. There was just the wind was a problem. We could talk about that all day. But, I mean, to score 3 points, not even score a touchdown in the first college football playoff game at Kyle Field is just an embarrassment in front of your 100,000-plus fans there. And, you know, the kicking woes for both teams were pretty bad. I mean, you should have taken the guy from the McAfee kick and just signed him to an NIL deal and threw him out there because he was better than both of these guys. I mean, you want to talk about – here's my take from this. Miami tried everything they could to lose this game.
Yeah, they did.
Like, I mean, honestly, when you look at it, I don't know why they didn't run the ball with Fletcher more. He only had 17 carries, and he was basically averaging over 10 yards a carry. I mean, Texas A&M could not stop him at all. But, I mean, the kicker went 1 for 4. He missed his first 3 tries. Yeah, I mean, it was just shocking. It was just like, how are both of these teams in the college football playoff? Because, you know, again, you could talk about the wind all you want, but, I mean, Pat McAfee was a former kicker, and he was like, you know, that's never really an excuse. I mean, you
make adjustments for it.
You make the adjustments. I'm baffled. I honestly did not see this coming. I think I had it at 38-35, Miami winning.
Right.
But I mean, you could almost say in the end, though, the interception in the end zone was just poetic.
Yes, for what this team was and how they ended up playing the game. And I think you mentioned at the beginning of the season, probably about midway through the year, that you felt a 4-loss team.
8-4. I mean, the jokes write themselves.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to be 8-4 yet again, but I almost feel like this 10-2 almost feels like an 8-4.
It feels empty. It feels
10-3 now.
Yeah, 10-3. It feels empty.
Or sorry, 11-2. Goodness.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, because I keep putting the South Carolina game as a loss, even though it wasn't a loss, and they ended up winning that game. It felt like they should have lost. But to your point, down the stretch, their last 4 games where South Carolina, or the last 5 games because they had Samford in there.
Right.
Their last 5, you had South Carolina where they had they looked pitiful offensively for an entire half. Had the school's biggest comeback in order to come back and win that game. Then they had Texas, who they lost to, and it actually wasn't as close as the score had it. Texas dominated that game. Then you had the Miami game. It just felt like this team sputtered there at the very end. I'm taking out the Samford game, obviously, but it seemed like they were sputtering towards the end of the season, and it felt like a team that had some of those games been dropped into the earlier part of the year, you would have had those 4 losses.
And I think part of the reason why they sputtered was because of the play of this guy right here, Marcel Reed. He just did not have a great final 2 games of the season. And then you look at the first half of the South Carolina game, he had 2 interceptions that basically just gifted South Carolina some points there to go down in such a big hole. But when you look at the stats in the last 2 games, 0 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Those are the 2 numbers that just stick out to me.
Right.
When you have a guy that you have said all year long that should be in the Heisman talk, go 0-4 in your touchdown to interception ratio in 2 of the biggest games in your school's history.
Right.
You just cannot have that
happen. And especially, I mean, that takes the last 2 games. But if you take out the Samford game, you throw the South Carolina game in there, I think it's bad. It's bad. I mean, especially in that first half.
Honestly, you take out the second half of the South Carolina game, but I know we're starting to cherry pick stats here a little bit. But I mean, it's just you just can't have that.
Yeah, and especially for a team like them that had championship aspirations. Obviously, had beaten Notre Dame at the beginning of the year. They had the resume of a team that looked like they were poised to win a national championship. All year long, head coach Mike Elko was telling everybody who would listen. He'd tell the Houston quarterback club. He'd tell his team. He'd tell random strangers in the press conference room, "Hey, this is not the same Texas A&M team. It's not the same team." We'll get his thoughts we'll get our thoughts on the back end. But he talked about remembering how this season will go for him as they move forward.
Yeah, what I just told him, I said to the seniors who just played their last game, they left a mark on elevating this program that will never go away. From where this program was 2 years ago to where it is now, I don't think that can be lost on people. I think it's made massive strides. And then I said to the guys coming back, there's still another major step we have to take as a program to finish. I think the last 2 games showed that. And so it's a rallying cry to the guys that are still here and still have time to play, but I don't think we can turn our back on the guys who just finished their careers here and everything that they accomplished and everything that they did for Texas A&M football.
a very measured, very sober answer as far as just the way he will think about this team as they move forward now. Two teams that were on the road got wins. Miami is one of them. They now will play Ohio State. If you remember football from a long time ago, these two teams had one of the best football games in the history of college football. They played, I think, the 2001 national championship.
Before my time.
Way before your time. But an unbelievable game there. Pass interference, call, non-call there at the very end. Your thoughts on the Buckeyes and the Hurricanes?
Yeah, I think in this one, this is where the road ends for Miami. I'm 100%. I'm sorry, Hurricane fans. You know, I'm an ACC guy. Yeah, everyone knows that. But it's just like, you're going up against Ohio State. But I will say this. On the Ohio State side, this is your one win, and then you lose to either Ole Miss or Georgia because you can't really trust the offense. Because I think, as I mentioned on Friday, when they actually play somebody, they scored 14 points against Texas. Mm-hmm. Again, that was the first game of the year, first start for Julian Sayin there at Ohio State. But then you look at the Michigan game, that was kind of sloppy. I mean, that wasn't really – you look at the first half of that game, and you didn't really play that well. And then you go up against Indiana, and you only score 10 points.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for them is – Bo Jackson kind of had a nice game against – don't get that name twisted, by the way. Don't get it he didn't really have a great game against Indiana. I think his biggest game was against Michigan. But it's just Julian Sayin's never been in this position. I'm still a proponent of it's not this year for Ohio State. It's probably next year.
Okay.
But, I mean, when we want to talk about early lines – 9.5.
Yeah,
it's kind of shocking, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. I think I had Ohio State winning by 28 in my prediction.
Yeah. And from my perspective, this is about right for an initial line. And we've played this game before with other lines. I think that it's easy Ohio State, and I think Ohio State by double figures is probably where the actual line should be. But Miami has obviously put a scare in some teams early on in the year, and now they are here. There's a lot of arguments if they even should be here, but now they're here, and it's a 9-point dog against Ohio State there in that matchup. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Oklahoma City and chat with our good buddy Holden Kruzbar. Stay with us. We're back here on Southeast Sports Plus, hour number 2 here on this Monday. Continues with our good friend Holden Cruz. Mark joining us from Oklahoma City. You were there at the game, Alabama, Oklahoma. We were talking during the break just a moment ago. Your thoughts on the game. You had a single question like, hey, what line of demarcation do you want to talk about? The one before or the one after? Let's get it from a chronological perspective, what you thought there in the early going. And then, of course, Alabama tying the game up at 17 and then pushing the gas after that.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a dream start for OU. And, coming into the game, it was kind of like, oh, well, they beat them the last 2 times. Can they do it again? And you just start off that way and you're like, holy cow, like Kalen DeBoer's kryptonite might just be Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to lie, I had thoughts about what I was going to be doing on New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. And then those were quickly dashed. So it's just kind of crazy because we've talked about how great this OU defense has been, and they got staked a 17-0 lead and lost. I mean, obviously you can blame John Mateer for the pick 6, but that was only part of their 34 points that they scored. So it was just really shocking to see the way they started that game and then just kind of the collapse from there. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that saved them was 50 Cent coming out between the 3rd and 4th quarter, and that was pretty cool. And Deion Burke scored a touchdown like 2 plays after that. So, you were like, okay, maybe 50 Cent saved the season. Maybe it's, they're going to get it going. And, the next time OU got the ball back, I was like, they need to have him come out again before this drive to get him hype again. And he didn't come back out, and OU didn't score again.
So if you're Jim Nagy and Brent Venables, where do you go from here? Because, I mean, you just basically gave up a 17-point lead. As you mentioned, you were already thinking about, hey, I might be in Pasadena next week. And then
he was already ordering an In-N-Out burger.
Yeah, he was already, exactly. Maybe I'm going to pick out some of my Rose Bowl merch that I'm going to pick up next week. And then
what time does the Rose Bowl parade start again?
Exactly. And now it's just like, how did this just happen? How did our Lou Groza Award winner miss 2 field goals to end the game? One ended up coming short. Like, where do you go from here if you're Oklahoma?
Yeah, the Sandell missing the field goals just kind of felt like, because he was on the super long streak. I think he got up to 24 after making one early in the game.
Yeah.
And you kind of just had the feeling like that he was going to miss eventually. It's probably not just going to finish the rest of his career perfect. And so, I'd heard it from some people. They're kind of joking that like, oh, I hope he would miss one against like Missouri or LSU and get it out of his system before potentially the playoffs. But yeah, that was kind of a weird one, but it also just kind of encapsulates, what happened in that game where OU just fell apart. And, their special teams had been their strong suit all year, whether it was Grayson Miller, punting and pinning teams back deep and letting the defense really go to work, or, the offense just scraping by enough yards to get across midfield and Sandell making a field goal. And both of them just didn't deliver. Grayson Miller obviously had the dropped punt, then got it blocked, which was a pretty critical moment. And then his couple of his other punts just weren't quite as good as we've become accustomed to watching him kind of pin teams back. And then it just kind of felt like, the perfect end to the game for how kind of miserable it ended up being after the 17-0 lead. Just like, all right, well, yeah, I guess that would happen. Sandell misses 2 field goals to end the game and everything. But yeah, going forward, now the big question is, does John Mateer come back or not? Mm-hmm. It's kind of an interesting question, because if you're a person just looking at his numbers, his stats from the season, you'd be going, well, obviously he's coming back. He's not going to the NFL. But, Mateer had been on NFL radars before coming into this season. And I think probably a lot of teams will look at the fact that he broke his thumb and played through it with that, tape on his thumb the whole time. And this was the first game he had played without all of
That's right.
that tape, the bandages on his thumb. And I mean, he came out and he looked really good. Obviously, he had the pick six that was just kind of a weird mistake. But outside of that, I mean, I thought he played really well. It was potentially probably his best game of the season, just in terms of like passing the ball. And so the NFL, it's there. And I saw something the other day. It was a Mel Kiper Jr.'s, kind of quarterback rankings list, and they had him as the fourth best quarterback available in this draft. And I mean, I don't know that Mel Kiper speaks for everybody, but if that's kind of the consensus that he's there as a top 5 quarterback, I think you have to really consider that if you're John Mateer, because I think next year's quarterback class will probably have a few more guys in it to be a little bit more loaded. Do you want to take your chances going now and maybe kind of sneak in as a late first round, early second round draft pick, or I mean, I don't know. I didn't even know. Maybe he sneaks up and into the middle of the first round. Who knows? Once the combine comes around and people get kind of more of a look and everything. But yeah, that's really where it will start for OU is whether John Mateer comes back, and if he doesn't, then what? Is Michael Hawkins your guy? They redshirted him this year, and is he who you want to give the keys to the offense to next year, or do they go portal hunting? I mean, there's about 500 quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now, so you have your options there, what you want to do, and then you kind of start to build from there. You got to get some pass catchers for whoever is going to be playing quarterback, and that's really where it kind of starts. I expect most of the defense to be back. You have a few guys that are going to be going. Linebacker is going to be kind of their area where they're getting hit the hardest.
I saw
just
McKenzie
from
enter the
graduation
portal.
and Kobe McKenzie hitting the portal. So Owen Heineke's trying to get another year of eligibility, but he's not very optimistic the NCAA is going to grant it to him, which I don't know if you guys know. He played lacrosse at Ohio State. That's where he started his career, and then he transferred to OU to play football. So
the opposite of Tyler
counting.
Yeah, exactly.
They're counting his lacrosse year against his eligibility.
Are they really?
So they're hoping to get that fixed, but they're not very optimistic about it. Yeah. So you lose Kendall Daniels, you lose Kobe McKenzie, Owen Heineke, Kip Lewis is probably going to the draft. So you're pretty bare there in the linebacker room. That kind of seems to be where, I think the two signal callers on both sides, the linebacker group and quarterback, those are really where it's going to come down to this offseason is what's going to be left and what do you have to go do in the portal at that point.
No question about it. We'll get your thoughts on the season overall and get your grade here in a heartbeat. But first, let's hear from Coach Brent Venables after the season came to an end.
Yeah, don't let anybody on the outside, put limitations on you, what we can and can't become. And it matters about what we believe. It matters, the work that we put into it. And I think, again, the strain, the love, the sacrifice, the work, the talent, I think there's lots of layers to all of it. I think our staff has recruited incredibly well. I think that showed again this season. I thought that was a kind of a foundational piece. I thought we brought in good players through the portal that helped us have the kind of season that we needed. And then I thought culturally speaking, I think I was as pleased with that piece as well. Everything starts with me when it comes to being a tone setter, the things that are important, our standards, the things that we value, the things that we're going to be about, the things that we're willing to tolerate and not tolerate, the type of people that we recruit, and then what we nurture every single day. Because if you're going to do it the right way and for something that, has, lasts longer than, just, this moment, then you have to nurture it every single day. And then, the people make the place at the end of the day. And I think we have incredible people in this building, both players and coaches. And again, I'm just incredibly proud of the group of guys that both are returning and especially the ones that are exiting.
So Coach Venables saying basically all the right things about, honoring the seniors and really, saying that this team had a kind of a mental fortitude going into the year. Given now that the season's over, what's your overall take on this year's team? they endure so much, and I think my grade is probably forgiving. I'm grading on a curve as it relates to everything. What would your grade be, and just some of the ways that this team either met or failed to meet expectations?
Well, I think the grade has to be an A, whether you go just leave it at an A or a minus or a plus. But, you know, when you take everything into account, I would give this team an A plus. I mean, going into the season, what I thought was the ceiling for this team was 9 wins and you flirt with the college football playoff. Yeah. And they obviously exceeded that. They won 10 games. They went to the college football playoff, hosted a game. I mean, where they were at last year, Venables, you know, coming off a second 6-7 season in 3 years. And, you know, you're basically having to completely restart on the offensive side of the ball. You know, you bring in a 30-year-old offensive coordinator and a quarterback that came from Washington State, where you're kind of wondering, hey, can they do it in the SEC at this level? And it wasn't always pretty, but I mean, the fact that they won 10 games, they went to the playoff, I think you have to give this an A+ on the season, because I don't think anybody was truly expecting this going into the season. If you would have told anybody, oh, OU's going to win 10 games, they're going to make the playoff, a lot of people probably would have said, oh, you're smoking something or whatever. Like, that's not going to happen. But it did. And credit to Venables and the staff, the players, because, you know, I mean, it did look a little bleak after losing the Ole Miss game at home. Right. You know, you had at Alabama, at Tennessee on the rest of the schedule. You kind of thought, well, maybe they go 8-4 or something like that. And no, they won those 2 games on the road, and this is a heck of a season for them, and I think it's already paying dividends on the recruiting trail, and I think it'll help them in the portal too. Like, hey, look what we were able to accomplish this year. We won 10 games. Our offense wasn't even that amazing. You know, if we could get a couple more players, imagine what we can do. I mean, you have this defense behind you. You have Venables as the mastermind of the defense. If you have that behind you, why would you not want to come play, you know, offense there? I mean, the pressure is essentially off you. You know, some places, like back in the Lincoln Riley days, it was, you know, the offense had to go and win you games. The offense had to go and win you games. So there's a lot of pressure. You had to keep scoring points. This team here, I mean, if you average 24, 28 points, you're going to be winning a lot of games.
I tell you what, you talked about this might spark something on the transfer portal trail. You got to find a running back that's actually going to play this next year instead of Jaden Knott. And, you know, we played this of, you know, where's Waldo game of Jaden Knott. I mean, that's probably one place to start. So that way it's not like if John Mateer does come back and it's basically him or nothing with this offense. But putting all of your sorrows and frowns aside here, there were 3 more games on Saturday. What did you make of the rest of the slate, and should the G5 still be in the playoff next year?
You know, it started the two best games were the 2 first games of the playoff. Correct. The one Friday night and the one Saturday morning. And I mean, hats off to JMU. They put up you know, some points. Yeah. More than you can really say about Tulane. So that was nice by them. I think as long as you're going to keep the format like this, you have to include the G5, and it's really just the ACC's fault for not having a conference for letting Duke be in your conference championship game. It's their fault. Wouldn't have happened if you just let Miami go to the conference championship game. They win, they're in. Then you don't have to worry about the whole Notre Dame debate, and you get all of your teams in, and whoever, Tulane or James Madison in. And it's fine. I don't hate the group of 5 being in there in this current format, but I would like to see just a complete separation of just Power 4 only. All of the teams that are in the Power 4, that's separate. Because, I mean, you know, Tulsa is in our state, and if you're a Tulsa fan, wouldn't you like to have a chance to ever win a championship? I mean, there's just no way you could ever win a championship right now. You can't, like, sure, you know, on the off years, I mean, you can beat OSU when they're down, whatever. But, like, you know, at some point, I think you'd like to win a championship and compete for one. And I just don't know that the group of 5 the way that college football has shaken out, college athletics, it feels like there's just not really a chance there. Because you can get those Cinderella runs still in basketball because you don't need as many players, but in football, there's so many players, you have to spend so much money to be able to compete. And I just feel like the group of 5 teams, they should want to win a championship, and maybe we have our FCS championship, our Group of 5 championship, and then the Power 4 championship. I don't think anybody's too upset about that. But I also would just like to see our conferences go to like a smaller number, and you have better games. Like the fact that you end up at the end of the season and you're like, well, OU and Georgia have never played each other, or you just end up where you're like, okay, you're trying to measure teams based off of certain data points that we never got to see Texas play Alabama. We don't actually, who would actually be the better team if it comes down to Texas and Alabama? Well, they didn't play, so we don't know. Like OU, Alabama, we knew OU was the better team in the regular season. They beat them on the road, so that's why you got them as the 8 seed, the 9 seed. It's just I'm tired of the mega conferences. I'd rather you have 10 games, you're 10 conference teams, and you play every single team in that league, and you play, you play 2 other Power 4 teams, and then maybe you get a Group of 5 team. I think we're missing out on really great college football because there's just ends up being too many boring games where you're like, I don't really want to watch Ohio State blow out Rutgers for the 70th time in the history of college football or whatever. And that was kind of the thing with OU in the Big 12 too, was like kind of getting tired of blowing out Kansas and beating Iowa State and Baylor and Texas Tech and everything like that. So the SEC, provided the challenge of that, but I would like it to be more regionalized, and you play everybody in your conference, and then there you go. But that's just me on my soapbox. Nobody cares.
I think a lot of people would want that, and it kind of feels like there's no putting toothpaste back in the tube, and these super leagues will be super leagues from there moving forward. Holden, thank you so much for your time. I know you got a chance to enjoy it before the game, not necessarily during the game, but hey, you had the Thunder to keep you afloat, keep you busy from here on out.
Yeah, we've got college basketball too. We've got a couple games. The OU women already played today. They won, beat North Carolina Central. Yeah. Which means we're just getting closer to conference play, and we can stop talking about these cupcake opponents that mean nothing.
We'll look forward to it next week, and we'll catch up with you then. Holden, thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas, my man.
See you guys. Merry Christmas.
See ya. Holden Krusmark from Oklahoma City. Lots of basketball now to keep up with as they move forward. Coming up on this show, we'll take a look at some bowl games, and we'll make some predictions. Stay with us.
closing up shop here ahead of another great week of bowl games as we take a look at some that will kick off this Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is pretty crazy. Pitt, 10-point favorite against East Carolina, and then Penn State Clemson. We talked about that matchup a little bit earlier in the year. We thought that might be a college football playoff matchup. Nope, that's just the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl this year. UConn facing Army. Army 8.5-point favorites. That's a little bit surprising in the Fenway Bowl. And then number 22 Georgia Tech taking on BYU in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And then the final 4 games this weekend. Miami, Ohio taking on Fresno State in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl. The Fresno State 6-point favorites in that one. Number 25 North Texas 3-point favorites against San Diego State in the New Mexico Bowl. Number 19 Virginia underdogs against Mizzou in the Gator Bowl. And then the LSU Tigers are 3-point underdogs against the Houston Cougars. And we talked about LSU might just want to get the season over with so they can get Lane Kiffin in there. And, you know, it's that time. We gotta make some more predictions.
We gotta do it. We gotta do it for the people here.
Penn State Clemson.
This is an interesting one. This game is in New York. Yes. I like cold teams that play in the cold against warm weather teams. I'm gonna take Penn State, but I'll do it with almost 2% confidence that they can get it done.
You know, I don't know how I feel about this because I think Cade Klubnik is playing in this game, so that in turn just has to, for me to just give the edge to Clemson. I know you talk about the teams that play in cold weather climates. Clemson has played up north in the ACC before. They know how to handle this. I think Clemson wins by a touchdown.
Okay, nice. All right, next up, Georgia Tech, BYU. This is an interesting number and 2 interesting teams because while a lot of teams we talk about during bowl season, sometimes you question whether their motivation is there or not. I think for both, they want to play and they want to end the season on a great note.
You know, I think I have to give the edge here to Georgia Tech because the 2 teams that BYU's played, a.k.a. Texas Tech twice, they've gotten blown out. The rest of their Big 12 schedule was a cupcake. Yes, that is my West Virginia Mountaineers included. They were cupcakes. And the only team they actually played, they just got blown out twice. I think Bear Bachmeier is going to be a great quarterback next year. I just think Georgia Tech gets a win this year.
I'm with you. I like Georgia Tech. I like Georgia Tech to win that game straight up. I think BYU is getting a lot more love based on what they did against not great opponents, and this is, to me, is a much better one.
North Texas, San Diego State.
You've been flying the flag for the mean green all year.
Give me the mean green. Let's go.
So just to be contrary, I'm going to go San Diego State.
Actually, you know what? I just thought about it. Drew Mestemaker's in the transfer portal. He's not going to play, so actually give me San Diego State.
Yeah.
Virginia, Missouri.
Give me Missouri. I'll take Missouri.
I think Missouri. I think Matt Zollers has a good game.
I have a thing about Virginia. We talked about this last week. Yes, whether I bet on them or bet against them. It's the state that I was born. They never do me any good.
LSU, Houston.
Give me Houston. LSU does not want to be in this game. They want to punt on the season, and Houston's playing right in their back.
Lane Kiffin's here. They're just going to want to get the season over. Give me the Cougars.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a Merry Christmas. We'll see you next time.